The slap came so fast I didn't even feel it at first. I just heard it a sharp crack in the middle of my father's dining room, loud enough to silence the grandfather clock in the hall, loud enough to make my sister lower her wine glass and smile like she'd finally gotten the ending she wanted. My mother's hand was still in the air when she screamed, "You don't have a choice anymore." In front of me lay a stack of legal papers transferring $11 million in property to my sister. My father leaned over the table and barked, "Sign it." I didn't. And then the lawyer at the end of the table adjusted his glasses, looked straight at my mother, and asked very quietly, "Ma'am, do you have any idea who this property really belongs to?" I had walked into that house expecting a family dinner. That was my first mistake. My father had called 3 days earlier while I was still on base, his voice warm in that careful, unnatural way people sound when they're performing affection instead of feeling it. He said, "Your mother wants everyone together, your sister's coming in from Charlotte, it's been too long, Emily." He said it like we were one of those close Southern families in magazine ads, the kind that gathered around polished wood tables and passed casseroles between generations with soft laughter and no history clinging to the walls. But my family had history in the walls. You could feel it in that house the minute you stepped inside. The air always smelled faintly of lemon polish, old money, and tension. Even as a kid, I'd known how to read the weather in those rooms better than the forecast. A quiet kitchen meant my mother was angry. My father's office door half closed meant trouble. Crystal glasses on the dining table on a Thursday night meant someone had decided a conversation needed witnesses. When I pulled into the circular driveway that evening, the house was lit like it was hosting a holiday party. The windows glowed gold against the darkening sky, and for one weak, foolish second, I let myself believe maybe this time really was different. Maybe age had softened them. Maybe distance had done what years of effort hadn't. Maybe coming home in uniform still meant something to them even now. I should have known better the moment I saw my sister's Mercedes already parked by the fountain. Claire never came early. Claire arrived when the room was ready for her. I shut off my engine and sat there a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. My reflection in the windshield looked steadier than I felt. Navy dress uniform, crisp blonde hair, pinned back tight face, composed in the way the Army had taught me to compose it. You learn after enough years in service how to let nothing show unless you want it to. How to take the hit after the hit after the hit and keep your breathing even. How to hold your ground while someone louder, richer, or more powerful tries to make you feel small. That training was the only reason I made it through the front door without turning around. My mother greeted me first, but not with a hug. She looked me over the way she used to inspect my room when I was 16, not to see me, but to find flaws. "You came in uniform." "I drove straight from the post," I said. Her mouth tightened. "Well, at least sit down before dinner gets cold." "Not I missed you, not it's good to see you, just instructions." Claire was already seated in the dining room, one leg crossed over the other, perfectly styled, a cream silk blouse draped over her like she'd stepped out of a luxury real estate ad. She stood just enough to air kiss my cheek. Emily. Wow, still doing the military thing. I looked at her, still breathing through other people's money. Her smile flickered, then returned sharper at the edges. Claire had always hated when I refused to play the role assigned to me. In our family, she was the golden daughter, beautiful, delicate, deserving. I was the durable one, the one who could handle disappointment, the one they expected to absorb impact and call it loyalty. My father entered last as usual, making an entrance in his own house like he was chairman of the board arriving late to a meeting. He was wearing a charcoal suit instead of his usual cashmere sweater, which told me this wasn't dinner, this was business. His jaw was set. His silver hair neatly combed back, the same expression on his face he used when he'd already made a decision, and only needed everyone else to submit to it. And then I saw the man sitting at the far end of the table. He was maybe in his 60s, lean, composed, wearing a dark suit and rimless glasses. A leather briefcase rested by his chair. He rose politely when I looked at him. "Captain Emily Warren," he said with a small nod. "Pleasure." I stopped walking. "Who are you?" My father answered before he could. "Sit down." No one says sit down like a father who thinks the words themselves are an inheritance. I sat, but not because he ordered it. I sat because I wanted to see the battlefield before I chose where to stand. Dinner was barely touched. My mother had set out roast chicken, green beans, warm rolls wrapped in a white towel. The food smelled good, but the room smelled stronger, expensive perfume, red wine paper, and something metallic under it all. Anticipation, maybe. Predation. The kind of scent a storm has before it breaks. Claire folded her napkin with delicate fingers. Let's not drag this out. That was when the lawyer opened his briefcase and placed a folder in front of me. Cream-colored paper, tabs, signatures marked in yellow where mine would go, transfer of controlling interest, real estate holdings, agricultural land, mineral rights, trust conversion language. Even before I finished reading the first page, a cold pressure started to build behind my ribs. I looked up slowly. What is this? My father clasped his hands on the table. A family solution. To what problem? Claire sighed as if I were being difficult on purpose. To the fact that you're sitting on property you don't need while my life is falling apart. I turned to her. Your divorce is not my emergency. Her eyes hardened. That property should have been mine years ago. I actually laughed then once because it was so absurd it almost felt theatrical. The land in West Texas. The ranch parcels. The commercial tract outside Austin. I bought the first acre when I was 24. I've paid the taxes, handled the lease agreements, sat in folding chairs with surveyors, bankers, and county officials while you were posting spa weekends online. How exactly should that have been yours? Claire's cheeks flushed. My mother jumped in. Don't talk to your sister that way. She has children to think about. And I have a life I built from nothing, I said. My father leaned forward. Nothing. You built it because this family gave you a name, a foundation, connections. I held his gaze. No, I built it because the Army taught me discipline, because I worked when other people slept, because I invested my deployment pay instead of spending it, and because every time this family underestimated me, I learned to move without asking permission. His eyes darkened. He hated that tone in me, calm, direct, impossible to bully. It reminded him I had become someone he could no longer control by raising his voice. He pushed the papers a little closer. Sign them. Tonight. I looked down again. $11 million. Years of risk work and patience reduced to a neat stack of pages, and my father's expectation that I would surrender it because Claire wanted rescuing again. Why would I do that, I asked. My mother answered this time, her voice trembling with indignation. Because we are your family. There it was, the oldest weapon in the house, not love, obligation. I set the folder aside. No. Claire stared at me, stunned, like the word itself was vulgar. My father's face changed, first color rising up his neck, jaw flexing, nostrils widening. Excuse me. I said no. You will not embarrass me at this table. I almost smiled. Then maybe don't try to steal from me at it. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the clock in the hallway ticking off each second like a countdown. My mother stood so fast her chair scraped hard against the wood floor. Before I could rise, before I could even fully read the motion, her palm struck my face. The sound cracked through the room. My head turned with the blow. I tasted copper at the inside of my cheek. Heat spread across my skin in a sharp, humiliating bloom. For a second all I saw was the shine of the chandelier blurred into white streaks. Then my mother screamed, "You don't have a choice anymore." Claire was breathing fast now, eyes bright. My father pointed at the papers and roared, "Sign them." But I didn't reach for the pen. I straightened slowly in my chair, put one hand flat on the table, and turned my face back toward them. Years of drills, years of command presence, years of learning not to flinch under pressure settled into my spine like steel. That was when the lawyer finally moved. He removed his glasses, polished them once with a folded handkerchief, and looked not at my father, not at Claire, but directly at my mother. His voice was quiet enough that everyone had to lean in to hear it. "Ma'am," he said, "do you have any idea who this property really belongs to?" My father slammed his palm against the table so hard the silverware jumped. "Belongs to WHO, he shouted. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" My father's outburst lingered in the air like smoke. For a moment no one moved. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to hesitate between ticks, as if the entire house were waiting for the lawyer to decide whether to light the match or put it out. The man did neither. He simply folded his hands and looked down at the papers in front of me, calm, in a way that felt deliberate. Controlled. Like someone who knew the outcome of a battle before the first shot was fired. My mother was the first to recover. "I don't know what kind of nonsense you're trying to start," she snapped, her voice still shaking from the adrenaline of slapping me. "We asked you here to handle paperwork, not to create confusion." The lawyer inclined his head politely. "Of course, ma'am, I'm not creating confusion. I'm trying to prevent a legal mistake." Claire leaned forward, her tone icy. "There is no mistake. Emily is transferring ownership to me. That's already been agreed upon." I turned my head slightly. "By who?" She didn't answer. My father pointed toward the documents again. "You are being unreasonable. Your sister is going through a divorce. She needs stability. That property will keep her secure." I wiped the corner of my mouth with my thumb. The metallic taste had faded, but the heat in my cheek remained not painful, just present, like a reminder of exactly where I stood in this family. "Then help her," I said quietly. "You own 3 houses, 2 investment portfolios, and half a dozen partnerships. You help her. That is not the point." "It seems like exactly the point." His voice sharpened. "The point is that the land should have stayed within the family." "It is within the family." "No," he said, leaning forward, eyes locked on mine. "It's sitting under your control." There it was again, control. That was always the word he circled back to. Not fairness, not need, control. Claire exhaled dramatically, as if exhausted by my stubbornness. "Emily, you don't even live here. You're deployed half the time. You don't understand what it's like raising children alone, managing expenses, worrying about the future. You don't need $11 million. "I don't need it," I said, "but I earned it." She gave a tight laugh. "You didn't earn land, you just got lucky." The words hung there. I watched her carefully. She believed that. Or maybe she needed to believe that. If my success were luck, then she didn't have to confront the alternative that effort, discipline, and risk-taking had built something she never tried to build. "I bought the first parcel," I said evenly. 300 acres outside Midland. Remember Dad said it was a waste of money. My father shifted in his chair. That was different. "No," I said, "that was the beginning." The room felt smaller now, the air tighter. My mother crossed her arms, still standing behind her chair like a judge who had already decided the verdict. "You're making this emotional. This is practical. Your sister needs help." I looked at her. When I was 19 and sleeping in a barracks room during training, did I need help? She hesitated just for a second. When I came home after my first deployment and asked if I could stay here for a few months while I looked at properties, did I need help? That was years ago. "And you said no," I continued. "You said it would disrupt Claire's routine." Claire's eyes flicked away. She remembered. My father's patience snapped. "We are not relitigating ancient history. You are missing the bigger picture. This family survives because we support each other." I almost smiled at the phrasing. Support. It sounded noble. It sounded balanced. But in this house, support had always flowed one direction. "Support," I repeated, "or redistribution." His jaw tightened. "You are being disrespectful." "I'm being accurate." The lawyer cleared his throat gently, not interrupting so much as reminding everyone he still existed. Perhaps he said it would be helpful if we clarified something before any signatures are discussed. My father turned sharply. "We don't need clarification, we need her signature." With respect, the lawyer replied, still calm, "You may not have the authority to request it." The words landed softly but carried weight. Claire blinked. My mother frowned. My father's face darkened again. "What are you implying?" he demanded. "I'm suggesting the lawyer said that ownership may not be structured the way you believe." My mother scoffed. "We've managed that property for years. We know exactly how it's structured." "Managed," the lawyer repeated quietly. I watched him now with growing attention. There was something deliberate in the way he chose his words, not confrontational, not dramatic, but precise. He wasn't trying to provoke. He was trying to introduce doubt. Claire shifted in her chair. "This is ridiculous. Emily's name is on everything." "Yes," the lawyer said. "Then she can transfer it." "Not necessarily." The silence that followed felt heavier than the one before. My father leaned forward slowly. "Explain." The lawyer glanced at me, then back at the papers. Before we discuss transfer, we need to confirm the origin of ownership, specifically who established the trust that holds the majority of these assets. Claire frowned. Trust? I looked down again at the documents. I had skimmed them before, but now my eyes slowed. There it was, trust language buried in the middle. I hadn't paid attention. I'd always handled things directly buying parcels in my name, then restructuring for tax efficiency. But I didn't remember setting up a master trust. That's just legal formatting, my father said quickly. Is it? The lawyer asked. My mother's voice sharpened. We've paid taxes on that land for years. Paying taxes doesn't determine ownership, he replied gently. Claire's confidence started to waver. Dad. He ignored her eyes fixed on the lawyer. You're overcomplicating this. I'm trying to simplify it, the lawyer said. Because if the structure is what I believe it is, then Captain Warren doesn't need to sign anything. She already holds controlling authority. My father laughed, once harsh and dismissive. Of course she does. That's why we're asking her to transfer it. The lawyer shook his head slightly. No, that's not what I mean. My heartbeat slowed oddly enough. Not fast or slower. The kind of calm that comes before a difficult decision when instinct tells you something fundamental is shifting. What do you mean? I asked. He met my eyes. I mean, the property may never have been under your father's authority to begin with. My mother's expression cracked. That's absurd. Claire looked between them, uncertainty creeping into her posture. Dad. My father's voice rose again. This is nonsense. We oversaw every purchase. Did you? The lawyer asked quietly. The question wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. It just sat there waiting. I picked up the folder again, this time reading more carefully. Lines of legal text blurred, then sharpened. Dates, filings. A trust designation I didn't recognize. My name appeared, but not as creator, as beneficiary. A faint chill moved through my chest. What is this? I murmured. My father leaned forward, trying to see. It's just... The lawyer spoke before he could finish. Captain Warren, I suggest you read page 14. I flipped to it. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the words settled into focus. And for the first time that night, I felt something shift, not just in the conversation, but in the balance of power itself. Page 14 wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself with bold letters or red ink. It was just another dense block of legal language, the kind most people skim and trust someone else to understand. But halfway down, a line caught my eye, not because it was loud, but because it was precise. Irrevocable family trust established by grantor. I read it again. Then again. The grantor's name sat at the end of the line, typed in clean serif font. My mind registered the letters before my emotions caught up. The room around me blurred slightly, not from shock, but from the slow realization that something foundational had been misrepresented not tonight, but for years. I lifted my eyes toward the lawyer. This trust. When was it created? 8 years ago, he said. 8 years. That was before the Midland parcel doubled in value, before the commercial lease, before the mineral rights deal, before everything snowballed. My father's voice cut in quickly. We restructured for tax efficiency, that's all. The lawyer didn't look at him. That is one interpretation. My mother stepped forward. Interpretation. This is our family property. He nodded politely. It may be, but ownership depends on who created the trust and how it was structured. Claire leaned across the table, her confidence slipping into irritation. This is ridiculous. Emily's name is all over this. She can transfer it. That's the end of it. The lawyer folded his hands. That would only be true if she were the sole authority. The document suggests otherwise. I scanned the page again. Beneficiary, not grantor. That meant someone else had created the trust and placed me inside it. My pulse stayed steady, but something deeper shifted, a quiet unease, like discovering a door in a house you'd lived in your entire life. Who established it? I asked. The lawyer tilted his head slightly. That's on the previous page. I flipped back. My father's chair creaked as he leaned forward. Emily, this is unnecessary. We've already explained. I raised one hand without looking at him. Just a minute. He fell silent, more from surprise than obedience. I rarely interrupted him growing up. I rarely had the standing to. The previous page listed the grantor. My eyes moved slowly across the text, absorbing each word. My breathing stayed even. I had learned in the army that the calmest person in the room often holds the most leverage. Panic gives away position. Silence forces others to fill it. Claire couldn't handle the silence. "Well, what does it say?" I didn't answer yet. I wanted to understand before speaking. The trust language outlined control conditions, management authority, distribution restrictions, transfer limitations. It wasn't designed for quick movement. It was designed to preserve. My mother's voice sharpened. "Emily, stop dragging this out." I looked up at her. "Did you know about this trust?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Of course I did. The hesitation was enough. "And you?" I asked my father. He exhaled through his nose. I oversaw everything. The lawyer finally spoke again gently. Oversight and authorship are not the same. Claire shifted in her chair, frustration bleeding into anxiety. "Can someone just explain what's happening?" I rested my fingertips on the paper. "This trust limits transfers." "That's standard," my father said quickly. "It also defines control." "You're overthinking." And I continued, my voice still calm. "It doesn't list you as grantor." The words landed quietly. My mother frowned. "That doesn't matter." "It might," the lawyer said. My father's patience snapped again. "You're making this unnecessarily complicated. The intent is obvious. The land stays in the family. Claire needs support. Emily signs. Done." I leaned back slightly. Intent doesn't override structure. Claire let out a breath. "This is unbelievable. You're really going to hide behind technicalities?" I looked at her. "You're asking me to sign away $11 million. Technicalities matter." She shook her head. "You've changed." "No," I said softly. I stopped apologizing. That quieted her more than shouting would have. The lawyer reached forward and tapped the document lightly. "Captain Warren, may I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Who handled the filing when this trust was established?" I thought for a moment. 8 years ago. That was when I'd been rotating between training cycles and short deployments. I remembered signing things, but nothing comprehensive. I'd trusted the process, trusted the paperwork, trusted someone. "I don't remember," I admitted. He nodded as if that confirmed something. "That's not unusual." My father leaned forward again, voice hard. "Enough. This conversation is pointless." Emily signed the documents. I didn't move. The room tightened again, tension building like pressure before a storm. My mother stepped closer, her tone now coaxing instead of angry. "Emily, sweetheart, your sister needs this. You don't even use that land." "I lease it." "That's not the same." "It is when the lease pays for itself." Claire's voice sharpened. "You're being selfish." I met her eyes. Selfish would be expecting someone else to solve your problems. Her face flushed. "You don't understand what I'm going through." "You're right," I said, "because when I went through things, I handled them myself." My father pushed his chair back slightly, the legs scraping the floor. "You will regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but I won't regret reading before signing." The lawyer gave the faintest nod, almost imperceptible. My mother folded her arms. "So what now?" I looked back at the document. Now we figure out who actually controls this trust. Claire leaned back, frustration mixing with uncertainty. "This is insane." The lawyer spoke softly. "Not insane, just incomplete." My father's voice rose again. "Incomplete, we've handled this property for years." Handling, the lawyer replied, is not the same as owning. Silence fell again, the kind that changes temperature. I turned another page, slowly scanning for authority clauses. My name appeared again: beneficiary, conditional authority, transfer limitations requiring grantor authorization. I felt the shift more clearly now. Something fundamental had been misunderstood, not by me alone, but by everyone in this room. I looked up. "If I can't transfer without the grantor," I said quietly, "then we need to know who that is." The lawyer nodded. "Exactly." My father leaned forward, irritation turning into something closer to unease. "We already know." "Do we?" the lawyer asked. Claire looked at him. "Then tell us." He adjusted his glasses, calm as ever. "I think Captain Warren should read the signature line." I lowered my eyes to the bottom of the page. The name there changed everything. The signature line didn't look dramatic either. No bold font, no underline. Just a name typed beneath the legal text, followed by a notarization stamp and a date from 8 years earlier. But the moment my eyes settled on it, the room seemed to pull inward, like the air had been quietly vacuumed away. I didn't react immediately. That was instinct. Years in uniform teach you to absorb information before showing emotion. Surprise is a luxury. Composure is a survival skill. So I read the name once then again, then traced the notarization with my eyes to confirm it wasn't an amendment or an addendum. It wasn't. Claire shifted impatiently. Well, what does it say? My mother leaned forward. Emily, answer her. I looked up slowly. The grantor isn't me. My father gave a short, dismissive laugh. Of course it isn't. We set it up for you. That's not what it says. He waved a hand. Technical wording. The lawyer finally spoke, his voice still measured. Who is listed? I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to say it, but because I wanted to understand the implication before releasing it into the room. Once spoken, it would change the dynamic. Words like signatures carry weight. Claire leaned forward, frustration sharpening her tone. Emily, stop being dramatic. I met her gaze briefly, then returned to the page. The grantor is someone else. My father's patience snapped. We know that. Just say it. I inhaled once. It lists a primary grantor and a controlling authority clause. The lawyer's expression sharpened slightly. Controlling authority. Yes. And who holds it? I tapped the page. The grantor. My mother scoffed. That's obvious. Yes, I said quietly, but the clause also restricts transfer without written authorization. Claire frowned. So get authorization. I looked up. From the grantor. The room went still. My father's voice hardened. Then we'll get it. The lawyer tilted his head. If the grantor is available? My mother frowned. What does that mean? He didn't answer directly. Captain Warren, is there a successor listed? I scanned the document. Yes. And conditional. My father leaned forward, tension now visible in his posture. You're wasting time. I set the folder flat on the table. No, I'm trying to understand why I can't legally transfer what you're asking for. Claire's composure began to crack. This is insane. It's your property. Maybe I said. The lawyer nodded slightly. Or maybe it's structured to prevent exactly what's happening tonight. My father's eyes flashed. Prevent what? Coercive transfer. The word hung in the air. My mother stiffened. No one is coercing anyone. The lawyer glanced briefly at my cheek, still faintly flushed. He didn't comment, but the gesture said enough. Claire shifted in her chair. This is ridiculous. Emily can just sign. Not without violating the trust, he replied calmly. My father's voice dropped dangerous now. You're implying we don't have authority over family property. I'm saying the lawyer answered that authority depends on structure, not assumption. Silence followed. The tension had changed. Earlier, the room felt like pressure pushing toward me. Now it felt suspended, uncertain, like a balance that hadn't yet tipped. I flipped the page again, reading the next section carefully. Distribution limitations, asset preservation language, a clause referencing long-term stewardship. This wasn't a trust designed for quick liquidation. It was built to endure. Why would someone structure it this way? Claire muttered. To protect it, I said. From who? I didn't answer. The implication was obvious. My father leaned back, folding his arms. This is getting absurd. Emily, you're overcomplicating a simple decision. I met his eyes. It stopped being simple when I realized I might not have the legal right to do what you're asking. My mother's voice softened, almost pleading. Emily, sweetheart, we're just trying to help your sister. I studied her face. There was genuine emotion there, but also something else. Urgency, fear maybe. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. If I sign, I said quietly, and it violates the trust, the transfer could be challenged. Claire frowned. By who? The lawyer answered gently. By the grantor, or any designated authority. My father's jaw tightened. This is pointless speculation. Is it? The lawyer asked. I looked back at the signature line again. The date mattered. 8 years ago. That was before the biggest acquisitions. Before the value exploded. Whoever created this trust had anticipated growth. Whoever set this up, I said slowly, expected this property to become significant. Claire crossed her arms. Then they should want it in the family. It already is. No, she said sharply, it's stuck with you. I shook my head. It's protected. The lawyer gave another small nod. My father leaned forward again, impatience returning. Enough. We are not debating semantics. Emily signed the papers. I didn't move. He stared at me, disbelief creeping into his expression. You're really going to refuse? I'm going to read. My mother exhaled sharply. You're embarrassing us. I almost smiled. No, I'm slowing you down. Claire's voice sharpened. You don't trust us. I looked at her. Should I? She didn't answer. The lawyer reached forward and slid another document toward me. There's an addendum. It clarifies authority. I scanned it. The language was tighter. Transfer restrictions. Grantor approval required. Successor clause activated only under specific conditions. My pulse remained steady, but the implication deepened. I couldn't sign even if I wanted to, not without triggering legal conflict. This changes things, I murmured. My father's voice rose again. It changes nothing. It changes everything, the lawyer said quietly. The room froze. My mother looked between us. Explain. He folded his hands. If Captain Warren cannot legally transfer the property, then tonight's request is invalid. Claire stared at him. You're saying she can't give it to me? I'm saying, he replied, she may not have the authority. My father slammed his palm on the table again. Then who does? The lawyer met his eyes calm as ever. The grantor. And where is the grantor, he demanded. The lawyer glanced at the document, then back at me. That, he said softly, is the real question. The word grantor lingered in the room like something alive. No one spoke for several seconds, but the silence felt different now, not tense but fragile, as if one wrong movement might shatter whatever illusion had held this conversation together. Claire broke first, then call them. Her voice sounded thinner than before, stripped of its earlier certainty. She looked between my father and the lawyer, expecting someone to restore the structure she'd relied on. No one did. My father leaned back slowly, his expression tightening in a way I'd rarely seen. Not anger, not yet. Calculation. We don't need to call anyone. This is internal family business. The lawyer's reply came gently. If the authority is external, it may not be. My mother shook her head. There is no external authority. This property has always been ours. Managed by you, the lawyer corrected quietly. The distinction landed harder than any raised voice. I kept my hands resting lightly on the table, palms down, grounding myself. The Army teaches you to recognize when control shifts, not suddenly but gradually, like weight moving across a bridge. Something had shifted. The urgency in my parents' voices, the uncertainty in Claire's posture, the lawyer's calm precision, it all pointed in one direction. Who filed this, I asked. The lawyer answered without hesitation. A private attorney, retained by the grantor. My father's eyes narrowed. Which attorney? I can provide the name. Do it. The lawyer slid a page forward. My father leaned in, scanned it, and for the first time that night he went completely still. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. His shoulders tightened. His breathing changed. The reaction was subtle but unmistakable. My mother noticed it too. What is it? He handed her the paper. Nothing. She read it and her composure fractured. That can't be right. Claire leaned across. What? My mother didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the document, lips pressed together. She looked up at me, and for the first time that night there wasn't anger in her expression. There was uncertainty. Emily, she said slowly, did you know about this? Number. Claire's voice sharpened. Know about what? My father cut in too quickly. It doesn't matter. The trust can still be modified. The lawyer shook his head slightly. Not if it's irrevocable. My mother's voice rose. Irrevocable. Yes, ma'am. Claire's confidence slipped further. What does that mean? It means, he replied calmly, the structure cannot be altered without the grantor's consent. My father leaned forward, voice hard. Then we'll get consent. The lawyer held his gaze. If the grantor is available. The phrase again, available. My pulse slowed further, my mind moving through possibilities. If the grantor wasn't present, authority shifted to successor. But successor clauses usually required conditions, incapacity, death, or formal transfer. I scanned the page again. There it was. Successor authority conditional. I read the clause carefully. My name appeared again, but not in the way I expected. Not as owner, not as grantor. As designated beneficiary with protected interest. That meant I could receive benefits but not override structure. Claire leaned back, rubbing her temples. This is ridiculous. We're arguing over technical wording. It's not technical, I said quietly. It defines control. She looked at me. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm understanding it. My father's patience finally cracked. Enough. This lawyer is overcomplicating things. Emily signed the documents. I met his eyes. I can't. You won't. I can't. The distinction mattered. He stared at me, disbelief sharpening into anger. You're telling me you don't have the authority over your own property? I'm telling you the trust limits transfer. My mother shook her head. This is absurd. The lawyer spoke again, calm as ever. Not absurd, protective. Claire exhaled sharply. Protective from what? He didn't answer directly. From irreversible decisions. The room quieted again. I studied the signature page once more. The grantor's name sat there steady and undeniable. Whoever created this trust had intended permanence. They had anticipated pressure. They had designed barriers. Why would someone do that? Claire murmured. To preserve the assets, I said. For who? I looked down. The beneficiary. She stared at me. That's you. Yes. My father's voice hardened. Then the beneficiary decides. Not in an irrevocable trust, the lawyer replied. The words landed like a verdict. My mother's hands trembled slightly. So she can't transfer anything. Not without authorization. Claire's eyes widened. Then this whole meeting may not accomplish what you intended, the lawyer finished. My father stood abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. This is unacceptable. No one responded. He looked at me. You're hiding behind legal technicalities. I'm respecting them. You're humiliating this family. I held his gaze. You tried to take $11 million from me. His jaw tightened. We tried to redistribute family assets. That's not your decision. It is when I built this family. I didn't raise my voice. And I built that property. The silence returned heavier now. Claire looked between us, her voice small. So what happens now? The lawyer answered quietly. We identify the grantor, or confirm successor authority. My father's eyes flashed. We already know who the grantor is. The lawyer tilted his head. Do we? My mother whispered, it can't be. I looked up slowly. Who? The lawyer didn't answer immediately. He turned the page, slid it toward me, and tapped the notarized signature again. Captain Warren, he said softly, read the full line. Not just the name. I leaned forward. Beneath the grantor's name was a second clause, smaller, almost overlooked. And that clause changed everything. The clause beneath the signature was only one sentence long, but it reframed the entire document. It specified that the grantor had established the trust for the exclusive preservation of designated assets until beneficiary independence and discretionary control criteria are met. The language was formal, almost clinical, but the intent was unmistakable. Whoever had created this trust hadn't simply protected property, they had anticipated conflict. They had designed a structure that delayed control until a certain threshold had been reached. I read it twice before speaking. This isn't just a preservation trust, I said quietly. It's conditional. The lawyer nodded. Yes. Claire frowned. Conditional on what? I scanned the paragraph above. Independence. Financial self-sufficiency. Demonstrated management. My father scoffed. You already meet those conditions. That's irrelevant. Not necessarily, the lawyer replied. My mother leaned forward. What else is there? I traced the text again. There was another reference, discretionary activation. That meant the grantor retained authority to decide when the beneficiary gained full control. My pulse stayed steady, but the implication deepened. This means, I said slowly, control doesn't automatically pass. Claire's voice sharpened. So we just contact the grantor. The lawyer looked at her. If that's possible. My father's tone hardened. Of course it's possible. The lawyer didn't argue. He simply rested his hands on the table and waited. The silence stretched again. My mother looked at my father, searching his face. You knew about this. He hesitated. It was brief but unmistakable. I knew the structure. That's not what I asked. I knew enough. Claire's voice rose. Dad? He ignored her eyes fixed on me. This changes nothing. You still control the property operationally. Operationally, I repeated, not structurally. That's semantics. It's authority. The lawyer spoke gently. Authority determines legality. Claire leaned back, rubbing her temples again. This is unbelievable. I studied the page once more. The trust wasn't just restrictive, it was strategic. It ensured that the assets couldn't be pressured out of the beneficiary prematurely. Whoever designed it had expected exactly this kind of confrontation. Why would someone anticipate this? Claire muttered. No one answered. My father's patience snapped again. Enough. Emily, you are overthinking this. The property remains under your management. You can still transfer it. I shook my head. Not without violating the trust. My mother's voice trembled. Emily, we're your family. I looked at her calmly. That doesn't override the document. Claire's frustration turned into anger. You're hiding behind paperwork. I'm respecting it. She leaned forward. You don't trust us. I met her eyes. Should I? She didn't respond. The lawyer slid another sheet toward me. There's one more section. I read it carefully. Dispute protection clause. Transfer attempts under duress could be invalidated. The wording was subtle but unmistakable. I exhaled quietly. It specifically guards against coercion. My father's eyes narrowed. No one is coercing you. I didn't reply. The silence answered for me. My mother folded her arms. So you're refusing? I'm saying I can't legally sign. Claire's voice sharpened. This is ridiculous. The lawyer spoke softly. Not ridiculous, protective. My father leaned forward again. Then who authorizes transfer? The grantor, the lawyer replied. And if the grantor isn't available, then the trust remains unchanged. The words landed like a door closing. Claire stared at me. So you're just keeping everything? I'm keeping what I built. My father's voice dropped colder now. You think this makes you powerful? No, I said quietly. It makes me protected. He stood slowly, hands braced on the table. You're tearing this family apart. I held his gaze. You tried to take $11 million. That was for your sister. That wasn't your decision. It is when I built everything. I shook my head. You didn't build this. The room fell silent again. My mother looked between us, her voice barely above a whisper. So what happens now? The lawyer answered calmly. The trust remains in effect. No transfer occurs. Claire's shoulders sagged. That's it? That's it. My father's jaw tightened, anger simmering beneath the surface. This isn't over. The lawyer looked at him evenly. Legally, it may be. My father turned to me. You planned this. No, I said. You did. He stared at me, breathing hard, the authority he'd relied on all night slipping piece by piece. For the first time, he didn't have the leverage he expected. The documents, the structure, the calm presence of the lawyer, all of it had shifted the balance. Claire looked down at the papers, then at me. So you're really not signing? Number. My mother closed her eyes briefly as if absorbing the reality. Then we have nothing. I didn't answer. I simply rested my hands on the table, steady, composed, letting the silence settle. The power in the room had shifted, not dramatically, not loudly, but undeniably. No one spoke for a long time after that. The house seemed quieter than it had any right to be, like the walls themselves were listening. The chandelier hummed faintly overhead, and somewhere in the kitchen a refrigerator motor kicked on the ordinary sound, almost surreal against the weight of what had just happened. My father remained standing, palms pressed flat against the table. He looked older than he had an hour earlier. Not physically the same silver hair, the same sharp posture, but something in his certainty had cracked, and without it the authority he carried like a second skin seemed thinner. You're making a mistake, he said finally. His voice was lower now. Not a command, not even anger, just a last attempt to pull the conversation back into territory he understood. I folded the documents slowly and set them aside. No, I'm making a decision. Claire leaned back in her chair, arms wrapped around herself. Her earlier confidence had dissolved into a restless tension. So that's it. You just walk away and keep everything. I don't need to walk away, I said. Nothing changed. She laughed bitterly. Everything changed. She was right. It had. Not on paper, the trust hadn't moved, the land hadn't shifted, the numbers hadn't altered, but the balance between us had flipped. For years, I had been the one expected to yield. Tonight, for the first time, I hadn't. My mother lowered herself slowly into her chair. The anger that had fueled her earlier had drained away, leaving something quieter, more fragile. Emily, we were trying to protect your sister. I understand that, I said. Then why won't you help her? I paused, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted it to land cleanly. Helping isn't the same as surrendering. Claire looked at me sharply. You think we're asking you to surrender? You asked me to sign away $11 million. That's family. That's leverage. The word sat between us. My father straightened slightly. You're turning this into a power struggle. It already was one. The lawyer remained silent, watching hands folded. He hadn't spoken in several minutes, but his presence anchored the moment. Not taking sides, just ensuring the structure held. My mother exhaled slowly. What do you want, Emily? It was the first genuine question of the night. I considered it carefully. Not revenge, not humiliation, just clarity. I want the property to remain under the trust. I want no transfer. And I want this conversation to end. Claire shook her head. That's not fair. I met her gaze. Fair would have been asking. We did ask. You asked with documents already printed. She looked down, unable to deny it. My father pushed away from the table and walked toward the window. Outside the driveway, lights cast long shadows across the lawn. He stood there a moment, hands clasped behind his back, the posture of a man recalculating. You realize, he said without turning, that this damages trust. I almost smiled. The irony wasn't lost on me. The trust protected me. He turned slowly. You're proud of that. I'm calm about it. Claire leaned forward again, voice softer now. Emily, I really do need help. There it was, not entitlement, not demand, just admission. I studied her face, the tension in her jaw, the faint exhaustion in her eyes. For the first time that night, she looked less like a rival and more like someone cornered by her own decisions. I'm not abandoning you, I said. She blinked. You're not... No, but I'm not giving up control either. My mother leaned forward slightly. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I'll help on my terms. My father frowned. What terms? I rested my hands lightly on the table. Structured support, not ownership transfer, no liquidation, no asset shift. Claire frowned. You mean loans? Or managed distributions? Enough to stabilize you, not enough to dismantle the trust. The lawyer finally spoke again. That would comply with the structure. My father's expression hardened. You're negotiating with your own family. I'm protecting what I built. Claire sat back slowly. You'd really do that, help me, but not give it to me. Yes. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Not gratitude, not yet, but acceptance. My mother exhaled relief, softening her shoulders. That's reasonable. My father didn't respond immediately. He studied me measuring something. The silence stretched. You've changed, he said quietly. No, I replied. I stopped folding. The room settled into a different quiet, now not hostile, not tense, just unfamiliar. The hierarchy that had defined our family for decades had shifted. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. The lawyer closed his briefcase gently. Then there's nothing further tonight. My father gave a short nod. No, there isn't. Claire gathered her purse slower than before. My mother folded her napkin carefully, as if restoring order through small rituals. The moment was ending not with drama, but with quiet finality. I stood last. As I moved toward the door, my father spoke again. Emily. I turned. You didn't take revenge, he said. I held his gaze. I didn't need to. He nodded slowly, understanding settling in. I stepped outside into the cool night air. The tension of the house fell away behind me. The sky stretched wide above the driveway, clear and steady. For the first time that evening, I felt the weight lift, not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped losing. Before I got into my car, I looked back once at the glowing windows. Families don't change in a single night. But sometimes the balance does. And once it shifts, it never fully returns. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been asked to give up something you built or forced to choose between family and self-respect, I'd like to hear where you stand. Share your thoughts below and tell me where you're listening from. Stories like this remind us that strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to hold your ground. We share stories every day about choices, consequences, and the moments that redefine us. So subscribe if you want to continue this journey with us. Thank you for being here and for listening.